What if I told you that in 1973, a woman looked up at the night sky and saw her own death spelled out in starlight? What if I told you that this same woman, Dr. Elena Vasquez, would disappear exactly 47 days later, leaving behind only astronomical charts covered in blood and a recording that NASA still refuses to release? Tonight, we dive into one of the most disturbing cases in modern astronomy, a story so unsettling that it's been systematically erased from academic records. This is the story of the astronomer who saw a star blinking in Morse code, and how that discovery led her down a path of obsession, madness, and ultimately, something far worse than death. On the night of September 14, 1973, Dr. Elena Vasquez was conducting routine observations at the Palomar Observatory in California. She was charting constellation patterns for a project funded by the National Science Foundation when she noticed something that would change her life forever. One star in the constellation Draco wasn't just twinkling, it was pulsing in a deliberate pattern. And that pattern, when decoded, spelled out her name over and over again: Eleona. But this is where our story takes its first dark turn. Because Elena Vasquez wasn't just any astronomer. She was a woman haunted by a childhood trauma so severe that she had spent her entire adult life trying to escape it through the cold, distant comfort of the stars. And what she saw that night wasn't just impossible, it was personal in a way that would unravel everything she thought she knew about reality itself. Elena had always been drawn to the darkness between stars. As a child in rural Mexico, she would lie on her back in the desert, staring up at the infinite blackness, trying to forget the sounds that came from her father's bedroom. The screams, the pleading, the sudden terrible silence that would follow. Her younger sister Maria had disappeared when Elena was 12 years old. Officially, Maria had run away. But Elena knew better. She had seen the fresh concrete in the basement. She had smelled the lime dot by the time Elena reached her 30s. She had buried those memories so deep that most days she could almost convince herself they weren't real. She had become one of the most respected astronomers of her generation, earning her doctorate from Caltech and securing a prestigious position at Palomar. The stars, she told herself, were pure, mathematical, predictable. Unlike people, unlike family, unlike the monsters that wore human faces. But on that September night, the universe decided to remind her that there was nowhere to run. The star, she observed, was designated HD 156,412 in the astronomical catalogs. It was a main sequence star, unremarkable in every way except for one thing. According to spectroscopic analysis, it should have been completely stable. There was no physical reason for it to pulse in any pattern, let alone one that formed recognizable Morse code. Elena spent the first 3 hours convinced she was experiencing some kind of technical malfunction. She recalibrated her equipment twice, checked for atmospheric interference, even called a colleague to verify her observations, but the pattern persisted. Dot dash 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 dot dash dot dot dash 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 dot dot dash dash dot dash dot dash 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 dot dash 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 dot dash Eleona. Over and over, with mechanical precision, every 47 seconds, that number would become significant later. For the next 6 nights, Elena returned to the observatory, documenting the phenomenon with obsessive detail. She photographed the star, recorded its light curves, and filled notebook after notebook with calculations, trying to explain what she was seeing. But as the days passed, something else began to happen. The message started to change. On the 7th night, the star no longer spelled just her name. It spelled her sister's name too. Ileana space, Maria space, IS space, HRE. Elena's hands shook as she wrote down the message. This couldn't be happening. Stars don't communicate. They certainly don't know about her dead sister. But as she watched through her telescope, the message continued, becoming longer and more specific with each repetition. M. Maria space, SOIU, space YOU space, KNAW, YOU space, KNAW space, UND space, YOU space, DID space, UNOTHING. The Temperature in the observatory seemed to drop 20 degrees. Elena's breath began to fog in the suddenly frigid air, and she could hear something that sounded impossibly like her sister's voice, whispering from somewhere in the darkness behind her. But the worst was yet to come. On the 10th night of observations, Elena arrived at Palomar to find that she wasn't alone. Standing in the observatory was a figure she recognized but hadn't seen in over 20 years. Her father, exactly as he had looked the night Maria disappeared, wearing the same stained work clothes, the same cruel smile. He was dead, had been for 15 years, but there he stood, solid as life, pointing up at the star that continued its relentless message. The star was no longer just spelling words. It was showing her things. Images appeared in the pulsing light, projected somehow directly into her visual cortex. She saw Maria's face, terrified and pleading. She saw her father's hands, covered in concrete dust. She saw herself, 12 years old, hiding in the closet while her sister screamed for help just 20 feet away. Elena tried to leave, tried to run from the observatory, but found that her feet wouldn't move. Something held her there, forcing her to watch as the star revealed more and more of the truth she had spent her life running from. The truth that she had known what was happening to Maria. The truth that she could have saved her. The truth that her cowardice had cost her sister's life. Night after night, Elena returned, compelled by forces she couldn't understand or resist. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped maintaining any pretense of normal life. Her colleagues began to worry when she missed faculty meetings and failed to submit her research reports. But Elena was beyond such concerns. She was trapped in a dialogue with the cosmos itself, and that dialogue was slowly driving her insane. The star's messages became increasingly complex and disturbing. It began providing details about Maria's death that Elena couldn't possibly have known: the exact time she died, the number of times she called Elena's name before giving up hope, the way her body had been disposed of, dissolved piece by piece in acid, then poured down the old well behind their childhood home. But the most horrifying revelation came on the 43rd night of Elena's observations. The star told her something that shattered her understanding of reality entirely. Maria wasn't dead. She was trapped, suspended somehow, in the space between life and death, conscious and suffering for over 20 years. And the only way to free her was for Elena to take her place. The star provided specific instructions. Elena was to return to her childhood home in Mexico, now abandoned and rotting. She was to go down into the basement, to the spot where the concrete had been poured. She was to dig, and when she found what remained of Maria, she was to lie down beside those bones and wait for her father to finish what he had started all those years ago. Elena knew this was impossible. Her father was dead. The house was probably demolished, but the star's pull was irresistible, and the guilt that had eaten at her for decades had finally found its voice. On the 47th night, Elena made her final observation. The star's message was simple: T-O-N-I-G-H-T. Elena Vasquez was reported missing on November 1st, 1973, exactly 47 days after her first observation of the anomalous star. Her car was found abandoned at the Mexican border, her passport unused, her bank accounts untouched. The last entry in her research journal, written in her own hand, but somehow different, more angular and desperate, read simply, "I understand now. The stars see everything. They remember everything. And some debts can only be paid in darkness." The official investigation concluded that Dr. Vasquez had suffered a mental breakdown due to work-related stress and had likely died somewhere in the desert while in a state of psychological crisis. Her research into the pulsing star was dismissed as the product of a deteriorating mind, possibly influenced by equipment malfunction or atmospheric distortion. But there were those who knew better. Dr. Robert Chen, Elena's research partner, had been tracking her observations from the beginning. He had seen the data, witnessed her growing obsession, and most disturbingly, he had confirmed the existence of the pulsing star. On the night of Elena's disappearance, Chen was monitoring the same section of sky when something extraordinary happened. The star gave one final message, clearly visible through his telescope, THNK space YOU. Then, it went dark forever. Chen tried to publish his findings, but the academic community rejected his work as unscientific speculation. NASA classified his photographs under national security protocols that remain in effect to this day. The star that had communicated with Elena Vasquez, HD 156,412, was quietly removed from all official star catalogs, as if it had never existed at all. But Chen never stopped searching. He spent the remainder of his career looking for other instances of stellar communication, documenting cases of stars that seemed to respond to human observation in impossible ways. He found 17 other instances over the next 30 years, each one involving an astronomer who subsequently disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The pattern was always the same. The target would be someone carrying deep guilt or trauma. The star would establish communication through Morse code. The messages would become increasingly personal and disturbing. And exactly 47 days after first contact, the astronomer would vanish without a trace. Chen's final research notes, discovered after his death in 2003, contained a chilling hypothesis. He believed that certain stars served as focal points for what he called cosmic guilt, supernatural entities that fed on human remorse and shame. These entities could somehow access human memories and use that information to drive their targets towards self-destruction. The 47-day cycle, he theorized, represented the time needed for the entity to fully consume its victim's psychological defenses. But Chen's most disturbing conclusion was that the entities weren't destroying their victims. They were collecting them, adding them to some kind of stellar consciousness where the guilty were forced to experience their crimes eternally, while simultaneously being used as bait to lure other traumatized individuals into the same trap. According to Chen's notes, Elena Vasquez wasn't dead. She was alive somewhere in the light of that distant star, reliving her sister's death forever while helping to call out the names of other guilty souls across the cosmos. The story of Elena Vasquez might have ended there, buried in classified files and dismissed academic papers, if not for a discovery made just last year. Dr. Sarah Kim, an astronomer working with the James Webb Space Telescope, was conducting deep space observations when she detected an anomalous radio signal from the direction of the constellation Draco. The signal, when analyzed, revealed a complex pattern of pulses that formed a clear message in Morse code. The message was a list of names, 17 names, to be exact. All of them belonging to astronomers who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances over the past 50 years. And at the top of the list was Elena Vasquez. But here's where this story becomes truly terrifying. Dr. Kim's own name appeared at the bottom of that list, followed by coordinates and a date. Tonight's date, Kim has been missing for 3 days. Her last known location was the AMA Observatory in Chile, where she had gone to conduct follow-up observations of the source of the radio signal. Her research notes, found in her abandoned office, describe her growing obsession with what she called the guilt star. She wrote about dreams where she was visited by all 17 missing astronomers, including Elena Vasquez, who warned her that the star was coming for her next. Kim's final entry, written in handwriting that becomes increasingly erratic toward the end, describes seeing the star with her naked eye, despite it being invisible to telescopes. She wrote that it was calling her name over and over, 47 times per minute. She wrote that she could see faces in its light, tortured and pleading. And she wrote that she finally understood why she had been chosen. 23 years ago, Sarah Kim had been driving home from a college party when she struck and killed a pedestrian. She had been drinking. She had left the scene. She had never been caught. The victim was a young mother named Elena Santos, who had been walking home from her night shift at a local hospital. The star knew, the star remembered, and the star was hungry for justice. This morning, the James Webb Space Telescope detected a new stellar object in the constellation Draco, exactly where Dr. Kim had been observing. The object pulses in a regular pattern that, when decoded, spells out a simple message, SRH space IS space HRE space N-O-W. So what are we to make of this story? Is it possible that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, there exists a form of cosmic justice so terrible that it reaches across impossible distances to claim the guilty? Are stars really watching us, cataloging our sins, waiting for the perfect moment to call us home? The official answer, the scientific answer, is no. Stars are balls of burning gas, nothing more. They cannot think, cannot judge, cannot communicate with Morse code or radio signals. The disappearances of Elena Vasquez and the other astronomers are tragic coincidences. Nothing more. But I want you to consider something as you lie in bed tonight, looking up at the ceiling and thinking about this story. Consider the things you've done in your life that you're not proud of. The moments when you chose cowardice over courage, silence over justice. The times when you could have helped, but didn't. The secrets you carry that eat at you in the dark hours before dawn. Now consider the possibility that every star in the sky is a spotlight, and that spotlight is searching for people just like you. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up at the stars, searching for escape from her earthly guilt, only to discover that some guilt follows us beyond the atmosphere, beyond the solar system, beyond the very edge of human understanding. She found out that in the cosmic scale of justice, there is no statute of limitations, no forgiveness, and no place to hide. The universe is vast and dark, and full of hungry things that remember everything we've tried to forget. And somewhere, out there, in the space between the stars, Elena Vasquez is still trying to warn us. Her message pulses across the void every 47 seconds. A desperate SOS that no one wants to decode. But maybe, just maybe, if we listen carefully on a clear night when the sky is dark and our guilt is heavy, we might hear her voice carried on stellar wind. Run, run before they call your name. Run before the stars start spelling out your secrets. Run before you realize that the universe has been watching you all along, and it's finally ready to collect what you owe. The astronomer who saw a star blinking in Morse code discovered that some messages from the cosmos aren't invitations to explore. They're summons to judgment. And the court is always in session among the stars.